This is part 3 of the chapter 33 lecture notes. And I just wanted to apologize because I realized that for the first part, I didn't put it in this view. I had it in the uh, view where you see two slides at once, basically. But anyway, sorry about that. So I mentioned we were talking about neurons and neuroglial cells, and astrocytes are neuroglial cells that form the blood-brain barrier. In other words, they keep the brain tissue from the blood um, because the blood carries germs and toxins. Um, and if we want to keep any tissue, healthy and free from germs and toxins, it would be our nerves and our brain tissue. Oligodendrocytes are special cells that form wrappings. They actually have extensions that wrap around the axon fiber of neurons, and they form these coverings called myelin. And it's sort of like the insulation in electrical wiring. It causes the electrical impulse to travel much faster down the axon than it would otherwise, than it would if the axon were just naked. Okay, so there's a section on homeostasis, and that's going to focus on regulation of internal body temperature. But homeostasis aims to keep internal conditions around a set point, or keep internal conditions fairly constant. Body temperature can range a little bit higher or lower than 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. But when our body temperature gets too high or too low, um, our our body is designed, we're warm-blooded endotherms, so we have control centers in our brain that are designed to, in fact, it's our hypothalamus in our brain that's designed to lower or raise our body temperature when it strays from the set point. So acclimatization is, that's a hard word to say, but that's changes in one organ system to maintain a set point in another organ system. So let's see. If the temperature in our body is detected, I guess you would say, by the hypothalamus, that is in the nervous system because the hypothalamus is in the brain. So to maintain that body temperature, our muscles, our skeletal muscle system, and our even our integumentary system, our skin, because we'll sweat whenever we're hot. So other organ systems will work to maintain the set point temperature, and that is acclimatization whenever other organ systems respond to a different organ system. Most homeostasis examples are maintained by negative feedback. Negative feedback is, for example, with a diabetic, when their blood glucose level goes up or rises, then the pancreas releases insulin, and the insulin causes cells in the liver to store glucose as glycogen and remove the glucose from the blood, so it causes the blood glucose levels to fall. And if the blood glucose levels fall too low, if a person's having low blood sugar, then the pancreas releases a hormone called glucagon. It's insulin to lower the blood glucose levels and glucagon to raise it. And glucagon will cause the liver to break down the glycogen stores and release glucose back into the blood and raise the blood glucose levels. So basically, if something's too low, the body reacts to raise it or reverse the direction of the change. So that's a negative feedback loop. And almost every example that you can think of homeostasis, temperature, glucose levels, pH levels of our body fluids, calcium levels in our blood, heart rate, breathing rate, all of those are maintained by negative feedback. Positive feedback is different. Positive feedback strengthens the response to a stimulus. So examples of this would be labor. So what happens is labor pains caused by the stretching of the cervix and the walls of the uterus. Labor pains cause the release of oxytocin, which cause more contractions and more pain, which causes the release of more oxytocin. So increase stretching increase oxytocin, which is released by the pituitary gland in the brain. Increased oxytocin causes increased contractions, and that is a strengthening of the response. And that occurs until the process is over. Blood clotting is another example. The blood begins to clot, and then it releases clotting factors. It causes more clotting, causes the release of more clotting factors and more blood clotting until the clot is formed. Maintaining body temperature, whether the animal is endothermic or warm-blooded, or ectothermic, which we call cold-blooded a lot of times. The thermostat, at least in most vertebrates, is the hypothalamus. It's definitely the thermostat in humans. Helps to regulate the body temperature. There's several ways to maintain temperature in ectotherms. They have to basically raise and lower their body temperature. Their body temperature is going to match the environment. So radiation means that the heat is coming from the sunlight. Evaporation is when whenever sweat leaves the body, it carries heat with it. That's an example of evaporation. So evaporation can cool the body. Convection is when heat travels through the air or through the water, through currents. And you can see this with the lion. And conduction is when something hot actually touches you. So conduction is when you touch, a coffee cup or something. Okay, and so that's the last slide for chapter 33.